Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. This is Zach over at NV Woodworks. One of the questions I get asked quite often is what scale should I use for resin casting? Or sometimes what scale do I use in my shop? So today's episode is going to be all about picking out a scale, what to look for in them. So in the world of resin casting, there's a couple of ways that you can measure out your part A and part B. Some resins, depending on which one you're using, call for volume measurements, some of them by weight. So in the case of volume, you're going to take a cup that generally is going to have graduations on it, like a pink mixing cup, something like that. You're going to measure out your part A and part B in the ratio that the instructions tell you. And it's just basically how much resin's in the cup, a volume measurement. The other way is by weight. And so in that case, you're going to need to use a scale, and you're going to measure out part A and part B by weight and then mix them together. Now, what kind of scale do you need to use to measure resin out? And generally, most scales will work okay. The big concern is how accurate is the scale and how accurate do you need to be? So if you're doing very small amounts of resin, if you're, making pendants or something, just doing very tiny amounts like something like this in this mold, or if you do pen blanks and you're making the tube in molds and you're only doing, one set of, tubes, that's a pretty small amount of resin. You're going to need a little bit more accurate scale to make sure that the ratio, is correct. The problem is, if your scale's not very accurate, the error built into that scale could throw off the ratio enough to have curing problems. So smaller amounts of resin require higher accuracy in your scale. If you're doing 32 ounce pours, 16 ounces of part A and 16 of part B, and you're making, bricks of pen blanks or something like that, or bowl blanks, it's not going to be as important because the error is not going to throw off the ratio enough, most likely. Now, for me, a lot of people ask, what do I use? And I need a highly accurate scale because I also use my scale to measure out dies, which needs pretty high accuracy. And what I found was a scale that reads down to 0.1 grams, so the 10th gram. And that's accurate enough for pretty much everything that I do, whether it's a small amount of resin or the dies or all that stuff. And that scale that I use also goes up to 3,000 grams. That's one of the problems that I found. Many of the highly accurate scales don't go very high, so you'll run out of room, if you're doing larger pours. So this one works for a wide variety of stuff. It's not that expensive. I think it was about 25 bucks, something like that. I got it on Amazon. And it's made by American Way Scales, and I think the model number is LB3000. I believe that's what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'll put a link to my resources page on my website. I have links to all the tools and accessories and all that kind of stuff that I use for resin casting as well as turning. So most everything is there. The scale is definitely up there. So there's a direct link on that page to where I got it. So that's what I use. That's what I would probably recommend. You're better off being more accurate in general. I mean, even if you're doing larger pours, if you're more accurate, that's really not going to hurt anything. But if you're, off, if your scale's not accurate, that's going to cause a problem. So again, this scale, I think 0.1 to 3,000, that's a really pretty broad range for most things that you're going to do for resin casting. Now, one thing that I will recommend that you do get in a scale that you buy or pick up, I would recommend getting one that has a power cord that you can plug in and plug it into the wall. The problem with battery operated ones, and this is the first one that I bought, it was a battery operated one. You can't even plug it in the wall if you wanted to. Problem is, it shuts off after, some amount of time. And what I found was, and I realized this, and there's no way to shut that off on this scale. What I found was sometimes I would be mixing things and it would take me a while, and the buffer time, it would pass and it would shut off in the middle of me measuring stuff. That is the worst. You're hosed at that point. Like, you have no clue unless you remember exactly where it was and can move on from there. So I would recommend get one that can plug into the wall so nothing shuts off ever for you. You just don't want to waste, you know, a whole cup of resin if your scale shut off and it screws up your measurements. So those are the two main things that are important to me, what I look for in a scale. Make sure you get one that's accurate enough for what you're doing, and I would highly recommend getting one with a plug. The problem is you may even get one, you may be able to find one that's batteries only and won't shut off. It doesn't have that feature. It doesn't shut off until you turn it off. However, the problem is the batteries may run out. So highly recommend getting one and plugging it into the wall. So hopefully that helps out for you guys. And again, that resources page on my website is nvwoodworks.com/tools. It's got all the links to, you know, pretty much everything that I use for resin casting as well as turning. So head over to there and click on the links. Some of them will help support the show if they are Amazon links, so I appreciate that support if you use those links. So if you're new to the channel, we do all kinds of resin casting projects, tips and tricks, and experiments, basically. I like to explore the world of resin casting and help others get started with it. So if you're into resin casting, looking to get into it, definitely hit that subscribe button so you get notified when new videos get posted. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.